Welcome, everyone. And today we are going to be talking about something that relates to people that have a family life. Now, most people wish for a safe and loving family life, but unfortunately, sometimes that's not always the case. So, my name is Sunita Badhan. I am a survivor of abuse, parent carer, public speaker, and of course, I am doing interviews currently. And today will be our special guest called Paul Naisbitt, and he is a certified divorce and breakup coach. So, Paul will be sharing his personal journey of what he's been through over the years and how he has become a divorce coach. So, I'm very excited to be speaking with Paul today. So just a little bit of background. So I met our lovely Paul a few years ago as admins for the Surviving the Ex-Narcissistic Partner groups. And a little bit more information about Paul is that is in his early years, he was with the Royal Engineers for the British Army, which is really amazing, Paul. And then after that, he's done some conferences where he did some public speaking for the narcissistic abuse conferences, which was about his journey having survived abuse and unfortunately post-separation abuse. And of course, the legal challenges surrounding that. And he spoke at these conferences in 2024 and 2025. And he had the honor to meet Richard Grannon as well. He's also attended further conferences with the Amazon in Darlington Mental Health Awareness Week, with Trauma Stop CIC. Further to that, the Cockrell and Co. quarterly business meetings as well. Paul is a divorce coach for life beyond the chaos. That's a very strong title there, Paul. So, shall we begin with a little bit about you, Paul? So, from the earlier years, so how was your childhood?
Yeah, thanks for having us on, Sinead. What an introduction. Thank you very much. Love
You
it. Makes it sound very, very good. I had a childhood which my parents did the absolute best for me. I'm an only child, and they were very conscious of obviously not to spoil me per se and make us ungrateful for anything. And due to being diagnosed with autism later in life. It pans out when we look back at me childhood. I wasn't into team games. Never really liked football. I'm not against it. I don't hate it or anything, and I appreciate people's passions. But I grew up motorbikes, BMX racing, skateboarding, that kind of thing, and stuff that was basically individual. Although I had people around us. Um, yeah, I had experienced some sexual abuse when I was younger, and that was from a very young age, and I was bullied very, very early on and singled out simply because I was different. And kids can be very jealous. I was probably a little bit overweight as such, but I wasn't a big lad, but slightly overweight and things like that, and obviously not being involved with the traditional team games. And with me BMX racing, for example, I did do everything to the best of my ability, and that everything just singled us out for bullying and things like that. I used to get time off school, and that didn't go down too well, unfortunately, with the other people who wanted to be off school. And yeah, so ultimately, my childhood was great, but it had this darker underlying side which wasn't really shown, wasn't really discussed, but ultimately set us up to be a people pleaser, and that's how we ended up where I was.
Well, thank you, Paul. It breaks my heart to hear that. And I'm so sorry that that's been your childhood. And as you're saying, it had two sides of the coin, as some people could call it.
Mm,
You had the side where you, as you were saying, you were out there having the fun, but also trying to balance out to maneuver through childhood with autism, which is hard enough. But
mhm.
then the dark side, I am so sorry that it's it's horrific that any child should go through that and with additional needs too. So really grateful for your bravery for sharing that, Paul. And
No
yes, you're
problem.
right, the people pleaser side. So it kind of put you into that sort of mindset. And from what I can hear, what you're saying, that it's best to please people than, hopefully maybe not to be harmed. Is that something of how you felt it was?
Yeah, so ultimately, yeah, being bullied at kind of early secondary school, junior school was probably the worst, and I moved towns, started a new school, and obviously things don't necessarily go away because of we understand the way that we act and we respond to people and the way that we are seen and while other people are seen, that kind of lends itself. Although secondary school was a little bit easier, there's certain aspects to that which was still very, very difficult. And when I left school, I'm grateful for this actually, but I went straight into the military. I wasn't very academic. Like I said, I wasn't diagnosed autistic till I was an adult. So at 16, 3 months after I left school, I went into the military, and the bullying continued beyond what you could possibly imagine. To be honest, I was singled out there. Uh,
Um,
and it wasn't just the other members of people who joined up at the similar time to me, because they were very jealous. Like, for example, I passed my driving test quite early on, because I used to help my father out, and I learned to drive very young. And so I had a car pretty much straight away as soon as I was 17. Um, they all didn't have that opportunity, and they used the military to pass the driving test. That kind of singled us out. I was never a drinker as such. I wasn't very good at it, to be honest, and I don't drink. I don't drink now, and because I didn't want to go out and kind of get into fights and be rowdy and that kind of thing. Um, I was just singled out all the time, and I used to get bullied in the army as well. But the good traits of autism, the stubbornness, the discipline, all of them that I know you know about, just kept us in there. And the shame of coming home and saying that I'd failed just kept me in for such a long time.
well, first thing is, again, I'm sorry that you've experienced such
All
a thing.
right.
To be in the army, soldiers, army to protect the country, and that's how you were treated. It's such a sad thing to hear. And on top of it, the reasons behind it, jealousy, is it alcohol that was fueling that bullying? Whatever it is, that's unacceptable how it is.
Yeah.
But the fact that from your childhood into early adulthood, you're there doing a good thing and your determination kept you in, of course. But it's
Mm.
still heartbreaking to hear that's the experience that you had. However, you did learn great things too, is also what I'm hearing.
Yeah, and it's a really, really strange dynamic, and it's a dynamic which the military have absolutely sort of cracked. That nowhere else I've ever seen this, and it's interesting. The people who were bullying us essentially would probably take a bullet for us. And rightly so elsewhere. Although I wasn't in the infantry, I was in the Royal Engineers. These people, when you're on exercise or you kind of going through your drills, everything is just nothing else matters. Do you know what I mean? You're there to do a job, and your job is to protect yourself and each other, and to do the role of your job. And I've got no doubt in my mind that these people would do anything. However, I led, to be honest, I led quite a doubled life in the military because I didn't enjoy going out drinking, etc. I got involved in the early rave scene, and again, I experienced some uh, brilliant times with that. I've got a lot of people who I grew up with who were very successful in that area,
Mhm.
as DJs, producers, that kind of thing. So I essentially lived a double life. So I treat the military as a job. And again, unfortunately, that didn't really help because they didn't understand what I was doing. Do you know what I mean? So I wasn't out drinking with them, etc. So that kind of singled us out further as well.
That's such a fascinating point you said there early on about, they'll take a bullet for you,
Mm.
but yeah, it doesn't sit well, obviously, the fact that, hold on a
Yeah.
minute, so it's not, but we're going to be bullying Paul, but we'll take the bullet for him because he's our victim. I don't, yeah, it doesn't sit well at all, but somehow you survived that. So although you learned amazing skills from the army, and then the double life, is that sort of what I'm hearing from you?
Yeah, yeah. I basically had a double life. Being a people pleaser, being bullied, being singled out.
Mhm.
I think what I was searching for was acceptance and to be part of
Absolutely.
and to be part of something. Um, and that's how I found it. I found it
Mhm.
through the UK rave scene as it boomed in
Wow.
1991, 92,
Yeah,
93, 94,
I remember.
etc. Yeah, and yeah, good memories of that. Also, yeah, some not so good memories.
Of course.
I saw bits and pieces that we shouldn't really see, but I try and yeah, I enjoyed it.
Sorry to add here, Paul, but I'm
Mm,
just wondering, like, with what you're saying, and there are some negative points of it as well, how going into the
mm.
whole outdoor social environments and things like that. But is it almost like changing your sort of mindset, feelings, and direction into something more fun? Just try and survive through the dark things that were going on. Is it something in that regard, maybe?
Yeah, and it is about acceptance. I've had some therapy and some EMDR therapy through psychiatrists and things
Mhm.
for trauma, and they've explained my love of roller coasters, my love of motorbikes, my love of and I'm like, why is this when I've been subjected to these past traumatic effects. And he said ultimately, part of my traits and the way that my mind works is I search out the uncontrollable rush from these things. So I would imagine that, yeah, just being part of something, and just that escapism from what was reality at the time. When I went out with a load of civilian friends at the time, for them 48 hours I could forget about everything that was going on.
Oh, wow. See, that's it though. And I
Yeah,
guess many survivors can relate. I could relate as well.
yeah,
So can I just share a little bit of where I went with my fun times?
yeah, yeah.
I mean, I've done a bungee jump, Paul, and flying or super.
Wow.
I mean, this sort of stuff I do really enjoy. But looking back, it does make sense. Like when you look back at it.
Mm,
So yes, I can definitely relate to that. So let me just summarize that. Obviously, your childhood life was heartbreaking, but also balanced out with,
mm,
actually, that's totally the wrong word, balanced out, but the other side of it was some coping strategies that you found that were working for you at that time. I will
yeah,
say working for you very, very loosely though, because obviously when especially a child goes through certain things, it's not necessarily the best way to work, manage it as such. Especially
mm.
if you don't know yourself with what's going on, if that makes sense. It is hard for children, absolutely. And yeah, I'm just so sorry what you went through. And then your life with the army, that is something yeah, it's put those years together, and that led towards relationships, is what we're going to talk about next.
Yeah.
So I start with the marriage aspect of it. So we're talking about 19, well, nearly 2 decades, I think, about 19 odd years. And unfortunately, you ended up in a marriage, loosely put, of controlling and coercive behavior. So I'm going to just give a brief summary about that for people that are unaware. So
Yeah.
being in a controlling and coercive marriage or relationship, there's a lot of a cycle of abuse that goes on, and this will be things like the love bombing cycle. And if people don't know what that is where a person will be excessively loved or gifted, but then it will cycle round to the abuse as well, and it's a big form of what keeps people trapped in that, which can cause the trauma bond. Alongside that, there's the discard that happens in this cycle. And a discard is when they could do something such as silent treatment, or worse, and completely walk out of the marriage or relationship only to try and get you hooked back in. It's just a complete disgusting game, really. Then we have gaslighting, intermittent reinforcement, blame shifting, the reward and punishment, which is very much involved with the love bombing. And then there's sexual control, and we've also spoken a little bit about that privately, haven't we, Paul?
We have, yeah.
And one thing I will say, and I've mentioned this in a previous interview, that not all abuse leaves bruises, and that's really, really important for people to understand. So the emotional and psychological abuse, the impact of that, how did you feel, Paul, with the emotional abuse?
And do you know what? I don't even know if I could put words to kind of explain that. I was I was in a place where I was definitely had suicidal ideation. Um, I felt completely worthless, and um, I was trying. I've said this many times, and it's probably the best way to do it, and the simplest way to explain it is, I was trying to fix something that couldn't be fixed.
Yeah,
And because I like solving problems, and I like kind of understanding things, and I research the life and death out of everything, and I do use visual more than reading. So I was researching, and people will say this: once you start Googling somebody's behavior, you've got a serious problem. And I must have started Googling the behavior easily 3 years before the kind of relationship ended, and I tried absolutely everything. Well, in all honesty, um, with the knowledge that I know now, and with the network that I've got around us, etc., then I would have, and what I would suggest is, once you start doing that, the best solution is to end that relationship, because the only person that you're going to create harm and everything to is yourself, because they're not bothered, they're actually enjoying it. And I don't mean that in a nasty way towards these people, but they're wired to win. And it's not about, it's not about kind of having a healthy relationship where one person's grown and the other person supports the other person growing, because we all grow at different levels, whether it's in our career, whether it's in our fitness, whether it's in life. And the other person can be there cheering the other one on and going, oh yeah, well done for that. It's not about that. They see a relationship like that, and if you're doing slightly better at any one time, that you need to be brought down. And
yeah.
brutal as it sounds, that's the easiest way that I could possibly describe it. Yeah.
So sorry again to hear the fact that the way the abuse was making you lead towards wanting to end your life.
Mm.
This topic isn't talked about enough, and if you don't mind me sharing, Paul, but
That's
A
right.
good few years ago, having obviously gone through it myself, I was raising this a long time ago, saying that actually the statistics and reasons of why people end their lives, it must be wrong because people aren't looking at the fact that if someone's actually being abused. So that needs to be looked at hugely. But additionally to that, I think the statistics for men committing suicide is the obvious stereotype. They lost their job, their relationship didn't work out. Like that's the
Mm,
stereotype. What about men being abused? That
mm,
abuse doesn't leave bruises, and they're likely maybe not to speak out. And look how long it takes. And you were in this horrid marriage for nearly 2 decades. And you just said that it took, it was 3 years before that you started looking into it. And exactly what you said, once you start looking into it, that you're questioning what on earth is going on.
yeah.
That's a huge red flag, if you want to call it that. And exactly what you said with how they are. So can I just mention, and I think I've mentioned it to you before. Um, it's nice of you to say that it's nothing. Well, in my opinion,
Yeah.
Schadenfreude. And
Yeah.
that means they're pleasured by the misfortune that you are going through, or
Yeah.
they're pleasured by the pain they're inflicting on you. They enjoy it, and these are the serious side of what they're doing. They're just enjoying it, and it's
Mm.
disturbing. So there is actually so much more darkness about them, and I'm sorry that you were in a place like that. But I just wanted to ask, if you don't mind, when you were in that dark place, how did it feel in your mind? Like, did it feel like you had control over your thoughts? Were you not able to focus? Like, what could you describe when you were in that point of the worst situation of it all?
Yeah, that's great. So what I'll do is I'll go back a little bit to when I was still in the relationship. So you mentioned some really um, popular tactics, I suppose, for the listeners of this. But the major one, there's two things that I'd like to add to that, if that's all right. And the first one is one of the most damaging tactics that I found myself in was what's called a double bind. Um, so a double bind is basically a no-win situation. And my ex was extremely clever at putting us into a double bind where no matter whether I answered a certain way, it led to a negative outcome, or if the two options that I had, basically there wasn't any resolution to the problem. And it was a very that's a real horrible position, and it got to the point where I just stood there and I didn't even react or retaliate because I just said I'm in that position again. It doesn't matter which way I answer now. It doesn't matter which way I communicate to you. And I honestly just shut down. And it took a lot. But obviously, with my research that I'd done, I'd realized where I was at, and that actually helped us. The the downside to obviously knowing that is once it was established that I kind of knew what was happening, it made the situation worse as well because instead of keeping that to myself, I made the worst mistake possible, and I was like, "Look, this is how I feel. This is what I perceive you're doing to me. This isn't reality," and all of that just made the situation worse. The other thing that I would say as well is I reached out to um, the two people that I kind of thought would or could at least talk to her. If the relationship was over, it was over. There was very little I could do about that. But to prevent this, but I don't think I mean I'm not 100% sure because we can't read into other people, but I think sometimes they don't want the relationship to be over because they have got control over you. So the two people I reached out to were her parents, and in all honesty, I believe that somebody who knows what's going on, has proof of what's going on, can see what's going on, and does nothing about it are worse than the abusers themselves. And that's the truth.
So would you say class them as enablers?
Yeah, so and I'm not saying that. I mean, people only change when they want to change, and I feel very strongly
Mm.
about this. However, they had the influence to say, look, if you don't want to be with them, then you either, you need to leave them, and just leave them alone. But then that's for me to do as well. And it's something that it's not a regret. I don't have regrets in life, because everything's shaped to where I am now. However, one thing that I would change if I could go back, and I would have left sooner, but maybe that would have changed things a little bit. I wouldn't have the pleasure of being on this video with you. We
Uh,
maybe wouldn't have met and things like that.
um,
So you kind of I'm great at reframing things, and everything that happens in life, leads to something. And however,
well,
yeah, I think I would have left earlier.
well, Paul, at the end of the day, many survivors know when you're in it, and especially when you can't see it because they don't allow you to see it, it does go on for years. And
Yes.
unfortunately, people are trapped. So for all of the reasons, trauma bonding could be children, could be a number of reasons. People are really, really trapped. And the
Mm.
biggest thing that you've said there is that they won't let you go.
No,
You know, there's
no.
something there about that too. And or there's other parts where they won't let you go, but they're off doing something else or with somebody else. So, they just want endless amount of supply, whatever it looks like, but regardless
Yeah.
of the damage they're causing to the people that they're involved in. So I will go on to post-separation abuse.
Wow.
So you came out of it, but you think that you're gonna now recover and it's ended, but no. We have
No.
post-separation abuse, and I'll just give an overview of it, if that's okay. So, post-separation abuse, people can experience from the ex-partner stalking and the risk of further harm, further controlling behaviour on slightly different platforms, shall we say. Financial abuse. So, there's financial abuse within the relationship, and then there's the financial abuse after the relationship. Court proceedings, that's huge. Court proceedings, what goes on in the courts and the behaviours. And I guess, one could actually say this is when the mask really falls off, is in the post-separation abuse. And this is where the time is very much high risk. So, how was it for you, and how many years did this take?
Yeah, horrendous. Absolutely horrendous. So, my mindset at the time, I was discarded,
Yeah.
and I'd already been sent to a domestic abuse organisation local to myself because I reached out to the mental health team. I truly believed what I was being told at the time, that everything was my fault. It was to do with my autism. It was to do with my mental health and the way that I was looking at things. They said that I'd been discharged from the system by my ex, because she was down as my registered carer. She discharged us from the mental health service, and they said for me to go back into the service, I needed to be interviewed and kind of brought back in as a referral. And halfway through the interview, they said, "Right, we're stopping this now. We can't work with you anyway. We need to put you into a domestic abuse organisation." That was all happening while she was still at home. And again, I kind of let out that I'd been I'd been taking secret phone calls from the domestic abuse organization, and they were kind of interviewing us and things. And she discarded me and went to her brother's in Poole, Dorset, which is obviously a long way. I'm sure everybody can
Yeah,
understand.
up north.
Yeah,
Yeah,
everyone can understand where my accent's from, so it was a long
yeah,
way from where I was, and
yeah.
and that was around December 16th. I'm pretty sure it was December 16th, 2019. And then didn't tell us, obviously, she was going down there, and then informed us that she wouldn't be up for Christmas, and then informed us in between Christmas and New Year that she wouldn't be back for New Year. Um, with the help of Harbour Support Services, they helped me produce a timeline of coercive control. And we basically, the first log with the police was Christmas Day 2019 for two reasons. One, it would be a day that I would never forget. Why I did that, I don't know. But the most important one was I thought, if I get the police out on Christmas Day, then they're not going to be doing something more important that requires their time. And that is how like little I felt about myself at the time. And she came back in the new year. I'd been informed by Harbour that things would escalate. I'd already been given some help and guidance, which is where it leads on to the post-separation abuse. And they suggested, it was my decision, but they suggested that I obviously went no contact or very minimal contact, and I kept my distance because the rage was getting really, really bad. It was escalating on email, on messages, everything else, as you would imagine from somebody who's lost control over you. Um, and I can honestly say, I've said this on other podcasts that I've done, that I think at that time, if I realized what the post-separation abuse was, and I did what was ahead of me, I maybe would have stayed in the relationship longer. It was that bad. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, it was that bad. And to be honest, it wasn't, and again, it wasn't just herself. It was a family. Uh,
Yeah.
It was a family as well. I remember COVID hit, and I was out on a run or a walk, and a younger brother kind of was driving and directed his car towards us as if to intimidate us. And it just, and it's little mind games to say, like, we're still here, we're there, you're not going, do you know what I mean? Yeah,
Um,
carry
I
on.
mean, just taking it a few steps back,
Mm,
she discarded you, but yet you're getting punished that she discarded you. Like
yeah,
it's mental. It's not. It's a circus, isn't it? A narcissistic circus,
yeah.
whatever people want to call it. And nothing makes sense. And they want to continue to put you through that suffering. And I'm sorry to hear that. And I'm so glad that you were able to recognize it as you were going through it.
Mm,
That's horrific to hear, obviously, what the other enablers were doing. I'm so glad that you were okay with what could have been worse, but it's
mm.
bad enough that the risk and threat was already there from that particular incident you shared about the car. I actually remember something about that a few years ago when you spoke to me, um, but so all of this was getting logged, and obviously a very bigger picture was being built about what she was doing along with her enablers. However, at that point, you felt as bad as the abuse was being with her, you just never thought it would be this horrific coming out of it. Yeah.
And yeah, and like you explained it like very, very well. The mask comes off, and there's no filter whatsoever, and it's just like I hadn't even seen that person ever. Do you know what I mean? I was
Um,
I was aware, to be honest. Yeah, I was aware of a father. Um, yeah, I was very aware, even a long time before this.
mhm.
Um, but I didn't realize maybe he was pulling some strings in the background. I don't know, and I'll never find out, and that's all right. But ultimately, she's an adult, and this is what was explained to us. She was an adult; she can make her own decisions, and she's choosing to act and respond in this way. And do you know, it was through the court system was absolutely like unnecessary, totally unnecessary, totally
Yeah.
unnecessary.
It's a big fat game in the court system, isn't it, for
Yes.
them? And a huge point to, I mean, when you said that as she was a carer for you, the things she did with the mental health team, I mean, this is absolutely disgusting with how people with additional needs get abused. this is serious. There needs, I mean, from my opinion, there needs to be a lot more recognition of that throughout the UK about what goes on with families with additional needs. So whether it's the partner, the children, there needs to be a lot more work done in that area. And I hope they do, achieve a lot more. But it's just that, they have control of you, not only through the controlling coercive behaviour, but also on the additional needs side of things too. And I'm so grateful, Paul, that you've got your determination, your strength, and you pulled through.
Thank you.
However, you've got the history of abuse you went through as well, and you pulled through, and you are honestly very inspiring for others to keep going, Paul. I hope you realise that.
No, appreciate that. Thank you.
You really, really
Yeah.
are. And it isn't easy. So the court system,
Yeah.
the abuse. So this is where it leads on to the work that you're doing as well. So not a lot of people know with regards to the dynamics of what goes on in court and divorce itself. And could you touch a little bit on about the financial abuse that goes on in there as well?
Yeah, so um where do we start with this one? So obviously we were trying to negotiate. I didn't get a solicitor until I absolutely needed one, and I realize now as where I've done some Mackenzie friend training that you don't actually need a solicitor, and you can actually get a barrister ad hoc, etc. But um, the my solicitor didn't know how to kind of deal with it, to be honest, because you're trying to negotiate, or you're trying to reason with somebody who is ultimately unreasonable and really trying. I mean, yes, we started off with the kind of negotiations quite low. You kind of do that thinking like this is the way that, and that was all guided with legal advice. But we ended up offering more than 50% of both of the houses, both the house that my parents lived in and the matrimonial home which I managed to keep. And incidentally, and this is quite a mad one, I would say nearly a year before separation, and I know I've jumped back a little bit, I actually had a conversation with the mother for about nearly half an hour, maybe 20, 25 minutes. And I'll remember it as long as I live. I was driving up the A1, I was going to meet other colleagues and stuff, and I was out for the day. I was explaining the situation that was going on. And actually said to her, I said, she wants my parents out of their house. And and I actually told her a year before, like a year before I went into the court system, or a year before separation. And she was like, "No, don't be stupid, Paul. That's really, yeah, like you're being silly now. Do you know what I mean?" I was like, "No, I bet you." And I walked away. I walked away. Actually, I said it to her face on a drive. Sorry, the conversation that we had in the car was about something else. I do apologize. But yeah, my facts are, I stood on her parents' drive and told it to her face. That's exactly what she was planning. Nearly 6 years in the court system. Not only did she take my parents' house, because she was offered 50, she was offered over 50% in money to leave my parents alone, leave me alone in the matrimonial home, and she would have been no worse off than what she walked away with anyway. She might have been better off, and she could have took all of that money and pretty much nearly bought a house outright. That's how much money she was offered. It was a considerable amount of money. To go and buy a house, have a fresh start for herself. And this wasn't necessarily just to protect me, it was to protect her, because I'd already done the work. I was already doing the work on myself. I was in the, I was in the domestic abuse organization. I knew I wasn't trying to trigger anything negative, and ultimately the best outcome would be for her to go and do that. That wasn't enough. It went all the way through every single court hearing. Even when the final hearing was done, which was 2023, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was, wasn't it? It was 23.
Yeah.
Even when the final hearing was done, she didn't comply with the court order. So the house had to be transferred, or the TR1 as it's known, for the house transfers. All had to be signed by the judge, and it all had to be enforced because she refused to sign them. She'd already had the kind of money, but what had happened ultimately is, my barrister said to us at the final hearing, it was adjourned for the afternoon. Paul, you're gonna have to give up one of the houses. So go away, have a word with your parents, and decide which one you would like to give up. It's either the matrimonial home or your parents' house. Incidentally, from the time in that December 2019 until it was actually transferred to her some 5.5 years later, she never contributed to either of the houses, by the way. So,
It's,
so yeah,
yeah,
so
sorry.
it was kind of, yeah, and again, I get that. My solicitor said, well, she's got to pay for somewhere to live and stuff, but it could have gone through a lot easier for everybody involved. Anyway, um, so back to that. So we decided to give up my parents' house for the simple fact that at the time mine was I'd bought it before I met her, and it had an
Right.
extension added to it to allow us at the time to work from home,
Yeah.
etc. So we decided that that would be we had a long discussion over it, and we decided that would be the way to go. So we did that, along with a good chunk of money as well, because there was actually a difference in the mortgage values and stuff. So the court worked all that out. That wasn't enough. What had happened was, um, there's a form called a Form E, which is like, all your income and outgoings that
Yeah.
you produce. Now, at the final hearing, the judge was very fair and said, if you can produce a letter from your parents to say that they will pay off your mortgage, that means it's better for everybody involved. We don't need to drag this on, sell both houses and split the money. What we can do is we can kind of just go with that, because I wasn't in a position at the time to get a mortgage. So she then took us back to court and said, I didn't declare my parents' savings on my Form E. And because I hadn't declared my parents' savings, which I didn't need to because it wasn't mine, she
That's
would
right.
want she wanted half of their savings.
Wow.
And that was pushed for. So along with, when she'd set up my limited company, set up 75% shares for herself, 25 for me. We,
Wow.
didn't do my tax returns, and I know that's my responsibility, but for years, she was kind of doing all of the paperwork, falsified mortgages, got me to sign mortgages,
Oh,
got my parents to sign mortgages, agreements and stuff. Along with all of that, the usual, I think the real hard part to deal with was the fact that she was going after half of my parents' savings.
so can I just bring this together? So, I mean, the
Mm.
first thing is 6 years, 6 years of court proceedings that didn't have to happen that way, clearly.
Correct. Yeah, yeah.
Yep, 6 years. Then, now, obviously, sorry, I forgot to say that you haven't had children with her.
No.
So, so, most people unfortunately know that when you go through abuse and you're coming out the other end, going through the post-separation abuse, there could be children involved, and there's
Yes.
lots of messy financial things there. However, in your case, she went after your parents. So, it's disturbing. It's absolutely disturbing that somebody would even do that. And your parents are quite elderly parents, I believe.
Yeah, so my
So,
dad, my dad's 81
mm,
now. My mum's
oh, yeah.
80. My dad's, yeah. it's another story, but he's never been the
Yeah.
same since obviously having to move out of that house. It's really affected him.
Look at that. That again, it's heartbreaking to hear that.
Yeah.
So she put you through and your family through all of that for greed, and
Mm.
this is what Paul is sharing here with everyone, is that there are so many different dynamics going on with the abuse that happens to people with or without children, but how it impacts people. So we've got just a little bit of time left here, Paul, but
Yeah.
I just want to go on to the fact that you survived that, you had your outcome, and then you went on to your next part of your journey, which was going into
Yeah.
public speaking and things like that. And then you are now a divorce coach. So do you want to give us a bit more information about what you provide with the services that you
Yeah, thank you very much. So, obviously, we met through the various channels, and thanks to Carrie Courtney
yeah.
for kind of providing that platform, that initial platform, and the
Mm.
conferences, etc. And it gave me the opportunity to give my perspective from a male point of view, because I don't believe there's that many of us that are willing to
Right.
speak up. And I think it's so important because it is subtle and it's so damaging as well. It's so damaging, in recovering from this. It's probably an ongoing project. We all want to be
Mm.
better. Um, what I've always said is, if I could prevent anybody going through, even one person going through what, or understanding what I didn't understand and what I actually endured, then it would make it somewhat worthwhile. And I had the opportunity last year, sorry, the first year in the first year of the conference, meeting Richard Grannon, who I did a lot of courses with Richard. Huge respect for the work that he does. And I did his original Fortress course, etc., which was a free online course, and it just kind of helped us out. And it was great to meet him, and kind of thank him for what he was doing. Going on from that, because one of the first YouTube videos I looked at was divorcing the narcissist, I found, and
Oh,
one of the first ones, and I was like, wow. And that was done by Richard Grannon and Sarah Davison. And it was one of their, and it's been removed now because I believe Sam Vacken was on there, and that there's a little bit of conflict with it,
oh,
I believe
right,
there.
yeah.
Yeah, but that's actually been taken down now. But I watched that on repeat over and over, and
Mm.
um, and then I had the. It's weird how life kind of comes around. Then I had the opportunity to meet Sarah at last year's conference,
Yeah.
and we got
Mhm.
talking, and basically she was like, I'd love you to join my coaches and become a coach,
Mhm.
and we kind of discussed how that could work, and the best route around that. So massive shout out to Sarah for
Oh,
believing in us, and kind of persuading us to join her network of coaches, which I think there's probably about 4 guys on it. I think 5 guys or something like that. Where I'm
yeah.
surrounded by loads of women, which is quite great. But I've met some fantastic people along the way. Huge shout to Louise from Brave Everyday podcast.
Yes,
John,
Louise, yeah.
yeah, Louise is lovely. Jonathan, from the Brilliant Humans. Even down to there's a guy called Chris Sheehan
Mm.
who does the Fearless Academy for Kids. All these people, and I know I can't even name them all that have truly believed in me, probably, and I've said this more than myself at times. So I'm hugely grateful. So I've now completed a master practitioner course. So I'm
Brilliant.
one of Sarah's master practitioner coaches, which I'm qualified to deal with people who have obviously been in abusive situations, and
Yeah.
abusive relationships. And then I went on to the UK Mackenzie Friend Network, because I realised that a lot of people who have been in abusive relationships don't have the funds to have solicitors, because a lot of financial abuse, as you mentioned earlier, is prevalent in these dynamics. So I then I did a lot of Mackenzie friend training, which basically helps support people through the court system. And obviously that coupled with the coaching just gives us a little bit of all-round package, and I get great value from helping others. I get great value from that.
Thank you so much for sharing. And I'm familiar with a lot of the people that you've mentioned. And of course, there's a lot of us where Harry Courtney's given us a voice when we're
Yeah,
first starting out as survivors. And look how far you've come. And it's absolutely
thank
huge,
you.
so
Yeah.
not long ago, really, you had a very different view of yourself based on a very disordered person around you and enablers. And now look
Mm.
at where you are and where you could actually now offer that support so that people are actually unfortunately going through that same sort of thing. So well done, Paul. And, I am so proud of you.
Yeah, thank you.
Proud of you. And yeah,
I mean, there's a woman up here. She lives very local in the northeast, and she's Paula Madison Green from
yeah,
Trauma
I've heard that.
from Trauma Stop CIC. We're trying to set
Well,
up. She's trying to set up the first male refuge in the northeast. And
mm,
do you know what?
mm,
She filled in every gap that the domestic abuse organization couldn't do because they couldn't do the funding. She dealt with all them
well,
endless hours of contacting the police, putting chronological orders to the police reports and everything.
mhm,
To the point where I got an apology from the police because they believed that they didn't do the situation justice at times, and there was a lot of areas which we went to IOPC level because
well done.
and do you know what, we weren't expecting an outcome, but Paula also, I'll be forever grateful because she basically found my parents' bungalow, and she
Mm,
pushed and got them rehomed as quickly as possible, and for that, yeah, she's a wonderful woman
thank
as
you,
well.
Paula.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, wonderful woman.
So, I mean, it'd be nice to speak to you again about the other side that you've mentioned, the IOPC and things like that, because that's
Mm,
another thing that needs quite a lot of work. And you guys have got the ball rolling, actually, from the work that you've done, the work that Paul has done. So, thank you both, because this is going
yeah.
to open the eyes to a lot of people and how sadistic it is of what the perpetrators are doing, regardless of gender. So,
Mm,
there are so many gaps and there needs to be a lot more improvements, but we have to start somewhere.
yeah,
So, thank you both of the work that you've done.
thank
So
you.
let me know, Paul. I mean, I'd love to speak further about the other side of things and, where things need to improve. And, we've still got a long way to go, but it's better than going nowhere, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But so I just want to thank you again for joining me. And would you like to say some last words of to maybe encourage people of whatever journey they're on? Or,
Do you know, it's so simple, but don't sit there in silence. There's people out there who can help, who will help, and who can prevent any further turmoil in your life and in your relationships. And that's one thing that I've learned. There's wonderful people out there. There's absolutely wonderful people. You're one of them. You were there right from the
oh,
start. We've been talking.
thank you.
Yeah, well, we've been talking for years, haven't
I
we?
know,
And
Paul.
and you're a great cook, and yeah, do you know, you
Oh,
know,
thank you, Paul.
no, you
Thank you.
deserve it as well. And like I said, there's so many beautiful people out there
Absolutely.
that are there. And if you're going through a horrible time, it's not going to last, and it can change. It can change.
So, thank you so much for your beautiful words, Paul. And it's an honor to know you. I'm so proud of you, Paul. Honestly, you've gone so far. And I'm really excited to see the rest of your journey too. So, yes, please do join us again. And we'd like to know more about your progress. So, we will share Paul's website about the services that you're providing there, Paul. And I just want to say a massive thank you for joining us today. You're doing absolutely amazingly. And thank you, everyone, for listening.
Lovely. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Take care. Bye bye.
Bye.